I'll show you the inside of this church. I was told this church is in the top 5 most beautiful parish churches in Scotland. And we, the Ushers, extended this church greatly, and we built the tower here and all the transepts and everything, and made it really gorgeous inside, which you'll see when we go in now. Really interesting. There's my uncle who was killed in the First War. There's a plaque to him. Not in the First World War, in the Second World War. Very early days of the Second World War. Alexander Dharma Usher. Now, very interesting here, this man, the Enigma codes, he got them off a sinking U-boat, and that enabled us to break the German codes. Yes. And one of the major factors in our success and winning the Second World War, because the Germans didn't know that we'd had the code. And he got them by, there was a near Port Said, German's U-boat was sinking, and he went on.
Wow.
And got some stuff out, and then he said, there's something I want to go down and get again. And he went down with another man who, quite frankly, I've forgotten his name, which is a disgrace. And they went down and they just managed to get this particular machine.
Yes.
Which was this code, had the code in it or something. I don't quite understand it.
Yes.
The transmitting machine.
The Enigma machine, yes.
And got it out of the submarine and down with the submarine and took him with it. All these windows, all these transepts, everything, the church was extended by my family. There is the Usher coat of arms again, up there. And there is the Turnbull coat of arms, behind the light. Not this one. No? No. The bull. Coat of arms, because the Turnbulls were the original feudal family here in Woolwater. This is, Bedrule is the Mecca for Turnbulls from all over the world. They come here regularly. All right, now there is Bedrule Farm, and Bedrule House is up here. This is where I was brought up, and I used to roam the farm in the hills. You can't, over the hill. His bedroom stretched a long way over the hills. And had a wonderful and very happy childhood here. This farm was the largest, it's one of the largest farms in the whole of the Scottish borders. And it is a parish in its own right, hence the church. And it was the largest farm on the Wells estate. There were many other farms on there, but none as large as Bedrule. Right, these are the Bedrule farm cottages where the workers lived, but now they've been sold off privately and are very much sought after. They were extended, these cottages were all modernized by my father in the late 1940s. And they were lovely cottages. Right, this is Bedrule House, which is where I was brought up. Very nice house. They've cut a lot of trees down. And here is the Bedrule farmsteading again. You get a better view than we did before. All there is to say. When we leave here, we'll be going to see Spittle Tower, which is where my great-aunt lived, Great-aunt May. It's a magnificent house, mansion house. And that's about it. This is Spittle Tower. It was built by Sir Usher's sister so that she could be close to him at Wells House, which is not far away, just over there. It's a magnificent house. It was sold in the 1960s. She actually died in 1955. It was sold in the 1960s and became a school. And then the school, I think, went bankrupt. And it was bought by a builder, speculator, who converted into 7, 8, or 9 flats. Very, very much sought after flats. There's lovely gardens here, as one would expect, and was built, and as I said, was built by the sister of Sir Robert Usher.
It's nice. It's a beautiful place.
Nice.
Well, don't look, this has spoiled it. This was originally the drawing room.
Yes.
It's now a kitchen.
It's what?
It's now a kitchen, dining room.
Well,
But
it's
it was
nice.
once a drawing room for the main house.
Yes.
You know, the
Yeah, but that
fireplace was
even
there.
before my
it
time.
went back further.
Yeah.
We bought the study, the billiard room, and the drawing room. Makes this
Something like a
apartment.
quarter or
An eighth. There are 8
Eighth.
apartments in this house.
really. And you were here. Did you know Stuart's great aunt?
No,
No.
I
No,
didn't.
that was before your time.
Yeah, I'm a
Childhood.
Yes.
I mean, we lived at Wells. Aunt
Yes.
lived here. They'd
Yes.
go to Dunglass.
Yes.
They'd go to Norton. in other Johnsonburn, other Usher mansion houses. He lived in a sort of fairy tale world, you know.
Yes. Yes.
The husband of Great Aunt May was an architect. And of course he built this, you know, because he would live here. Of course he did.
Yes.
The stonework is perfect. It is absolutely A1 quality, sound as a pound built. And it's a large, you know, it's quite a substantial sort of mansion house.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
This was the game larder here. Now it's a flat. Not everyone lives in an ex-game larder.
A fridge. They're living in a fridge, Stuart. They're living in a fridge, effectively.
Right, here are the Wells gates and the lodge house here. A drive of about half a mile or thereabouts. You would arrive at the mansion house. Wells House was a magnificent mansion house. Large house staff, obviously garden staff. And here was a forester's house, and there was the Wells estate sawmill. Ran very well and very nicely until basically all the criminals, or the crooks as I like to call them, got control of the estate. They got control by virtue of the Down syndrome of my cousin, who supposedly inherited the estate. The timbers to repair Nelson's ship, the Victory, at the Battle of Trafalgar, were supplied by the Wells estate, as were the timbers for York Minster in the 1980s, I think it was. They were supplied from the Wells estate here. We've got nothing for you, unfortunately. Sorry, mate, sorry. No, we've got nothing for you. You're hoping for a cube of sugar or something, aren't you? Right, here we are at Wells, or more accurately, at the Wells stables. These are the Wells stables, built by Sir Robert Usher about a century ago. Magnificent stables. That's all bedroom on that side. All the land that you see over the valley. And up here stood Wells House until it was dynamited in 1951. Living there. It's all another manifestation of the fraud that was inflicted on my family. Right, this is Hall Rule House in the background. It was lived in by a brother of my father's, my Uncle Stuart, and he had the misfortune to have 2 Down syndrome sons. And they lived here for most of their lives. They were born in the Argentine. Uncle Stuart married an Argentinian peasant who bore him these children, and all the Usher Trust estates were steered into the so-called ownership of the elder of these 2. They inherited the family title, and then we were cleaned out, everything gone. So this is where they lived. Quite a nice house. If you see the right-hand portion of the house, if you look carefully, that was added by Sir Robert Usher in the early years of the last century to make it a larger house. It's a small country house, but it's a very nice place, nice situation. Right, here we are at Norton. This was acquired by Sir John Usher in the 1880s, 1883 I think it was, and was the main family home very close to Edinburgh. It's about 4 miles out of Edinburgh. He died in 1904, and it was inherited. He left it to his eldest son, part of the Usher Trust, Sir Robert Usher, who lived here in the winter. Sir Robert Usher was the master of the Linlithgow and Stirlingshire hunt, which is the local hunt here. Alas, no longer because of all the railways and the motorways. So he lived here in the winter, and in the summer he lived on the Wells estate in the Scottish borders. The family home was sold in 1953 and became a hotel, and in the 1980s Sir Richard Branson bought it. It became the flagship of the Branson Virgin Group of hotels in Scotland. it expanded enormously. It's now got 85 bedrooms, which are in these new developments on this side and at the back. It's got a lovely walled garden where we will go. You can see the wall down there. And it was a great hub of activity for our family in the latter part of the 1800s and the first part of the 1900s. Great loss to our family for it to have gone the same way as every other place. Fortunately, we, the ultimate beneficiaries of the Usher family, of which I'm only one of two who still exists, the only male one, we still own a few acres at the back here. We're sitting in the walled garden. They were beautiful gardens they were, but now, as you see, all around they've developed them. And there's a swimming pool, huge swimming pool underground here, and masseurs and toenail cutters and function suites for parties, very large function suites for parties, weddings, all sorts of things going on here in this garden, all with all these new buildings. Right, these are the Norton stables. Many horses kept here. The Ushers were a very keen fox hunting family. And I think I said Sir Robert Usher was a master of this hunt, which was a Linlithgow and Stirlingshire hunt for 17 seasons, which was a long time. The horses were kept downstairs. Upstairs would have been the head groom's cottage or living quarters. When Norton was sold and became a hotel, it became a very upmarket restaurant in here downstairs. But for some reason they closed it, and it is now a business conference centre. And that's about it. The garden wall, here is the garden wall again, made of that whinstone, which is, as I mentioned before, the hardest stone imaginable. I think this wall will be standing here in 1,000 years' time, no problem at all. Right, here we are at Dunglass. This used to be a huge estate. I was told it had 16 farms on it. And here stood magnificent mansion house of Dunglass, which was destroyed just shortly after the Second World War. Why exactly? It was basically for reasons of total incompetence. This house was built where that mansion house stood. There are the stables, we'll go there. You'll get some, we'll get some photographs there, filming there. There's a lovely walled garden up there. Dunglass is famous for its collegiate church, which you can just see through the trees there. Dunglass was owned by the youngest brother of my grandfather, Sir Robert Usher, of Norton and Wells. He bought this estate in 1918, so it's nearly 100 years in the family, and ran it pretty well. But then it seems to have fallen into the hands of lawyers and other totally incompetent people. And the magnificent mansion house was destroyed. This is Dunglass Collegiate Church. In the 1500s, I think it dates from the 1500s, the church started building collegiate churches. The main reason for that was to teach people to read and write, or increase literacy. This is a well-preserved example of a collegiate church. And many people come to Dunglass to have a look at it. It's very close to where the old mansion house stood. Dunglass originally belonged to the Earls of Home, or Hume. They call their surname Hume, but it's pronounced Earls of Home. Sir Alec Douglas Home, who was a Prime Minister of Britain in the 1960s, his family belonged over the centuries, and so they are the heir to the earldom of Home. Is called Lord Dunglass, after this estate. Many of the homes are buried here, and so is Francis Usher up here. Robert Burns came here in the late 1700s, I think it was 1787, and to Dunglass, and said, "This is the sweetest place I ever saw." Robert Burns was easily the most famous Scotsman of all time, and it is a very, very sweet place. This is one of the three entrances to the Usher Hall. Foundation stone was laid by Queen Mary in 1911, and that one by King George in 1911 at the same time. Of course, they never laid these stones. If they tried, the stone would have done both the King and the Queen a serious injury, without a shadow of doubt. Opened 1911, the foundation stone laid in 1911, 15 years after Andrew Usher had left the money for the hall to be built. He one day walked into his jewelers in Edinburgh and said, "I've got so much money, I don't know what to do with it." The jeweler suggested that he build a city hall. He thought this was a good idea, and shortly thereafter he put money aside for a hall to seat 3,000 people to be built. 2 years later he died in 1898, and 12 years later they eventually decided to get cracking building the hall on this site. And he was Andrew Usher was my great-great-uncle, the brother of Sir John Usher, who was my great-grandfather. This is Johnsonburn House, which was acquired by Andrew Usher in the 1880s. He used to have shooting parties here. He owned some farms in the area. Beautiful old building, very historic building. I've been inside it. It was a hotel for quite a few years and had some notable people staying here as guests, one of which was the Duke of Westminster. So this is the front, and then we'll catch the garden frontage as well. When Mount Everest was climbed by Sir John Hunt and Edmund Hillary, actually Hillary in Tensing, the first news to hit Britain came to Johnsonburn House, because Sir John Hunt was a great-nephew or a grand-nephew of Andrew Usher. So the family was told that Everest had been conquered. So here the news came first. And that is Johnsonburn, another of Andrew Usher's homes. It's a lovely place. Right, this is the John Usher Institute of Health, which is donated to the Edinburgh University in late 1898. It actually started, a chair was founded. The first chair in public health in Britain was founded in Edinburgh by John Usher and Mr. Bruce and a Mr. Crowell. Having founded the chair, Mr. Crowell and Mr. Bruce said to John Usher, well, a chair in public health without a building to house the chair was of not much use. Would he build a building to house the chair of public health, where students could be taught in public health? This was the building that John Usher, or Sir John Usher as he was, got built and donated to the University of Edinburgh. One of the main motivations for an Institute of Public Health in Edinburgh, which motivated Sir John Usher, was the work of Louis Pasteur, the great French, we could call him microbiologist, I would imagine. The word pasteurization is named after him, it came from him. So that also had a major impact on the chair being founded and the institute actually being built. In its time, it was the most modern institute in Britain because Sir John sent a number of people over to Europe to study the main institutes in Europe, like the Max Planck one in Berlin, and I forget, there's another big one in France. So this was just the thing, and it was opened by Sir John in 1909 in front of a large group of university people. 2000 and it was opened in 1902. In 2002, it had its centenary. I was invited, had a wonderful time here. Lots of lectures, professors from all over the world came. And one of the things that really made me laugh was that we were told that mankind discovered that eating cooked meat was a damn sight healthier than eating raw meat in 15,000 BC. Before that, they were eating it raw, and of course it was causing terrible problems with their teeth. But having cooked it, their health improved markedly. I find that very amusing, I must say. There is the Usher coat of arms. On the left, the 3 batons and the Scottish saltire. Right, there is a dedication to Sir John Usher of Norton and Wells, 1902. Unlike the Usher Hall, Sir John saw the building and actually opened it. The Usher Hall, donated by Andrew Usher. Andrew Usher died long before it was completed. This is the village of St. Abbs. This is the harbour area. The village is over here and down there. We will probably be going there and doing a bit of filming. This village did not exist until it was established in the 1880s by Andrew Usher of Edinburgh. He had bought an estate in this area, farms and various other places, and including this, it was known as Coldingham Foreshore. The fishermen lived in Coldingham, and they walked just over a mile every day to here, where they had a very small harbour, that square area, near that white house, and set sail for their fishing. When Andrew Usher bought this estate in the 1880s, the fishermen went to him and said, "Our harbour is too small. Can you help us build a decent-sized harbour?" And he said he would. He managed to get a small grant from the government, but he paid probably 90% for this whole new harbour area here. He also built these houses, 3 or 4, I was told, to give the place a bit of a better look, or for utilitarian, for the fishermen. Of course, they were delighted. Having having had success the first time, they thought they would go to him again and said, "Look, thank you very much, obviously, we've got a nice harbour, but we want to establish a proper village here. Would you sell us land here?" Andrew Usher agreed to do so and sold them plots of land at a nominal price. Of course, they were delighted. They then said, "Well, a village without a school or a community centre is not ideal. Can you manage a community centre and a school?" He agreed to do that, so he built a community centre and a school. Of course, they were absolutely delighted. He then said, "Aren't you forgetting something?" They scratched their heads and they couldn't think of anything. And he said, "Well, what about your spiritual well-being?" And they said, "Oh, yes, a church. That would be utterly fantastic." So he built them this rather large church, beautiful inside. But he then at the beginning, at some stage, he made one condition for all these benefactions, and that was that there was to be no license in the village for drink. And the fishermen agreed to that, and to this day there is no license, there is no pub in this village. It is held to this day, which of course makes St. Abbs a very sought-after area, because you don't get this awful business on Friday and Saturday nights. The people who want to drink in St. Abbs, like the fishermen of old, but now they walk in the opposite direction. They go to Coldingham and have their drinks. And the walk home over a mile is good for sobering them up.
What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning? Way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises early in the morning.
Right, here we're down on the seashore virtually. Andrew Usher then decided he would build a house here on the cliffs overlooking St. Abbs. That is a house that he built. Magnificent place. He was extremely fond of music and was a good singer, so he included a minstrel's gallery in the house. And lived here not often, but he came whenever the pressures of work in Edinburgh were not too great. He lost his son here, his only surviving son, to eczema at the age of 23 years old, and tried to save him by having seawater pumped up to the house. He built a little pump house halfway down the cliff there, which still you can't see it, and had seawater pumped into the house because seawater was thought to be good for eczema. In fact, I think it is actually bad for it. And his son Howard died, only surviving son, so he only left daughters who inherited this and his other estates. Over there on the cliffs there is the largest colony of puffins in Britain. You can see all their droppings called guano. And also in the sea here somewhere, I'm not quite sure where, but St. Abbs is the diving center, deep sea, or not terribly deep, but anyway, sea diving center of Scotland. And a terrific amount of divers come here. There's some big dome, underwater dome here. As you see, it's very spectacular rock. You can imagine the geophysical forces that were exerted. Just look at this here. Immensely powerful geological forces created St. Abbs. That's a stroke of luck. Look.
I know.
This one's. Right, we're down in the harbour area now. This was the old harbour of St. Abbs, which a fisherman used when it was known as Coldingham Foreshore. And this whole area where we're standing is the new harbour, which was built by Andrew Usher for them, which is far more commodious, which made the whole village tenable. This is all low tide, unfortunately.
So, have you had a good couple of days, Stuart?
Excellent, excellent. I think everything has gone fantastically well. I'm delighted. So lucky with the weather too. Well, how did you enjoy our filming activities over the last 2 days, David?
I thought it was wonderful. I've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot.
Good.
Stuart was uniquely generous in his refreshments. So I've had a jolly good time, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, it was a pleasure working with you, David, and we'll have another shot at one or two other Usher properties which I'd rather forgotten about.
There's even more.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart.